Yeah, no, none of that across the table, you two, okay? Okay, thank you. Okay, I'd like to call the Tuesday, April 23rd meeting of the Committee of the Whole to order. And I would like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Ktunaxa, the Syilx, and the Sixt people, and is home to the Métis and many diverse Aboriginal persons. We honor their connection to the land and rivers and respect the importance of the environment to our strength as a community. Are there any late items? Seeing none. And if we could have adoption of the agenda, and we had a very late removal of the Kootenay Lake Partnership delegation, so they will not be joining us this evening.
Okay.
And I just want to acknowledge that Councillor Payne is not with us today for this meeting, as he's in Victoria, and tomorrow UBCM is doing some lobby days on the Hill, so he's participating in that in his role as president of the AKBLG. We have no previous minutes to adopt, so that's moving us right into the city manager's report. Sorry.
Could we have a mover, like an adoption of the agenda?
Oh, did I not adopt the agenda? Did I actually just both? Okay. Adoption with removal, sorry.
Move, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Woodward.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Tate. All those in favor? And that carries. Okay. Now we'll go to 6.
Sure. Not a lot to report other than just doing a lot of collective bargaining and sorting out other labor type items, such as bringing the new employees through local 2087, new transit employees. Yeah, these things are complicated. We have to figure out benefits and seniority and all sorts of things. So, and eventually bring these two groups together. So we've been working on that. I think I reported last time. The good news is, from the operational side, everything seems to be running smoothly. It's just the intricacies of having another union that we need to bring together with 339 right eventually, but that takes some work to get there. So we've been working on that. And, I guess the other major thing is really just trying to get some of these projects moving forward. The biggest one being the Civic Arena. So we had some key tenders closed today. So we did get pricing on those. We did get bidders. It's a unique project. It's not super attractive.
Did you say Civic Arena?
Civic Center.
Okay,
Arena.
thanks. Okay.
Yeah. The Civic Center complex, excluding the arena. So that was good news. So we're just working through that to hopefully get those awarded and get that project off the ground. And then, working hard with BC Housing to find a solution to, the unhoused in our community. So we're, working on that, and attended the AKBLG this last weekend, and I'm sure others will report on that one. So that's it.
Oh, I have a question for you, City Manager. I have two questions. Can you, or it might be for GM. I just had some curiosity if you could give us like a 1 or 2 sentence update on the canopy, and a 1 or 2 sentence update on, like last year I heard about the water reservoir is not a reservoir, it's a dam or something similar, and like what that's looking like. Those are of interest to me.
I'll let Chris speak to those.
Thank you through the chair. From the canopy, the pier work, it is progressing. You will see additional work starting there in in 2 weeks' time.
Okay.
1.5 weeks' time, you'll our city crews will go in there and really start working on the landscaping, which is, a little decent level of landscaping, not just sort of planting flowers and grasses, but there's some brickwork to be done and stuff like that. So we'll be working on that. The construction company, Flat Rock, is still working on installing the wood there. So we've been working with them to ensure that, it's finished in as timely a manner as possible. But yeah, so you will notice additional work and it was 2 weeks as of last Friday. That's why I'm having troubles with the math. So last Friday, Charlie said, 2 Fridays from now, we'll be mowing in there. So our city crews will be for that landscaping piece. So that's the pier, or more pointedly, the canopy and finishing that off. As far as our water, and really, so I think referring to that our reservoir isn't so much a reservoir as it is, a small pond in the grand scheme of things, but our reservoir is really the snowpack is the way to think of that. And so, yes, snowpack is, quite low this year in our area, and I can't think of what the value was off the top of my head for April 1, which is usually the right around, or that's, I think, the measuring mark that they use every year. Anyways, we know that it was below average, somewhere in that 70 to 80% of average range. And while that is obviously concerning from, purely statistical perspective, it's really how it melts off in the coming months. So while we're all appreciating, warm, sunny weather, if we could just sort of, govern those hopes and wishes for a while and be okay with cool weather that maintains the snowpack up there for a longer duration to really allow it to soak into the ground and become that effective water source for us going deep into the summer and into the real dry season of the fall.
Awesome. How's it going on the Gyro Park Bridge?
Gyro Park Bridge is I think I updated last time, it is installed. We're still just waiting on some of the safety matters, the connecting it to the either side of, I guess, call it an island. It isn't quite an island, but the shelter and the playground side. So we're just waiting on some materials to get fabricated for that, and then the crews will be up there putting that in. While we're talking sort of installs like that, Salvation Army stairs. Again, there's the existing temporary stairs that are in. We have the company that is building us the new stairway, which will go down there. They just built a mock-up of the stairs and did a dry run with that, so they feel confident that everything's fitting nicely. When I say a mock-up of that, they actually build a dimensionally accurate wood set, not obviously a full stair set, but an outline of it just to see how basically it mates up to the wall that it's going to be attached to and then sits down below on that side to make sure everything's good. So they're happy with that, and they've just sent the treads away to be galvanized. So that will we anticipate that'll be wrapped up here in a couple of weeks. Once those come back, then the install's pretty swift and easy, and we'll have to do a bit of concrete work on the pavement up above once those get installed.
Councilor Woodward.
Thank you. I think this is a question for the GM. I noticed this year we didn't have the huge dust cloud over Nelson. Is that was because of the early time to clean up the vacuum cleaners?
Yeah, street cleaners. February we had a big push where we got a lot of it off, and it certainly made a difference. Hey,
yes.
It's also part of the reason that we're worrying about our snowpack.
Sure.
But we took advantage of February and we're able to get on that. And as I mentioned before, and just to keep the sort of narrative going, that allowed us to get after a lot of work in the downtown core this early spring that we haven't been able to get at for the last number of years, such as concrete repairs and stuff like that. Try and buff out a lot of those sort of edges that end up rising up, or cracks or holes, things like that, to be able to get after that and still be open for the patio season, right? So As mentioned earlier, patio season officially is open tomorrow. So I, anticipate seeing construction on that. But because of the snow being gone earlier this year, we were able to do the street sweeping in advance. So a lot of that heavy lifting was done, and then we had to come down and do the flushing. The reason why all of that work is so important in advance of patio season is it actually saves us tons of work during the summer. So if we don't come down and actually flush with essentially, well, they are fire hoses, then it leaves a buildup of silt all along the curbs of our streets and everywhere. And that's where all the weeds start. So if we don't get that all rinsed out of there, then we'd be spending all summer going through pulling, weeds and dandelions and all stuff like that, all down Baker Street and everywhere. So it is really an important piece that, a little bit of effort now saves us a lot of work throughout the summer. And I know that it's always just, challenging when the weather does get nice and sunny and people imagine sitting out on a patio, enjoying some company. What was it, the best handheld device for keeping in touch with friends? A glass. Anyway, so yeah, that all comes part and parcel. So February, early we got to clean up. That makes us worried about the snowpack, but because of that cleanup, we were able to get some basic maintenance done on the downtown core and still get open early, make sure that everything's flushed out for patio season.
Thank you.
Councillor Payne.
I guess still on the theme of drought and water, I know a lot of communities around the province have started or are considering water restrictions. How do we know when we start talking about that? And I know that's not our job. I'm just curious how you determine that. And the second part of my water question is, I think it's over a year ago that we had a presentation on the flow-through water coolers that are in some of the local commercial establishments. Have we made any progress around removing those and replacing them with something more economic, environmentally?
Yeah, so the first piece, looking at any type of restriction, stuff like that, for us it's a very confusing time, I think, for people, because of course there's a lot of this discussion around drought, et cetera, because snowpack is our reservoir. We aren't drawing down a reservoir by active use now, or looking at it differently, building up our reservoir by curtailing use now. So you'll see like the flushing activities in the downtown core, people are like, well, it's an amazing amount of water you're wasting doing that. It's like, well, because the runoff is coming and it goes right into the lake anyways, we're grabbing it. So we have abundant amount of water right now as the creeks and streams roll with all the melting snow. And it's really when we get into later into the season when we start tracking how those creeks and streams are flowing in snowpack and doing a lot of calculations to understand when we need to start changing that behavior, like the behavioral change, where we start getting out there and talking to people about when to water, things like that. So definitely something that is very much on our radar, and realistically will likely be in a situation like that this summer. I think we have to expect to be in every summer now, and people need to start getting their heads around that kind of gone are the days of leaving the hose on in the front yard just to cool down the house when the hot summer nights, that type of thing. So we do now, in the last couple of years actually, and this is part and parcel from that presentation about the swamp coolers or once through coolers, is we've spent a fair amount of effort setting up monitoring of our different water sources, so we can start tracking, like having our own data on how they're doing and how they're doing historically from flows. So while we always had an idea around flows, as far as what we were seeing coming into the plant, now we actually have monitors upstream on our main water sources that will help us really forecast when we're starting to get into that time where we need to be getting on the messaging a bit more about more reasonable use of water, and then getting into the water restrictions and the different levels. As far as the once through coolers or swamp coolers, yeah, I mean, it's something that certainly continues to come up. They're not allowed anymore to put the new ones in, and so it's about working with the organizations that have those existing and phasing those out. And that's something that to be honest, the work on, trying to move that along, it was trumped by the monitoring work to make sure that we knew what was happening from our source. And so that's something that we have on our work plan for this year to start discussing with those folks now. That will represent a fairly significant investment for some to swap that out. So it'll probably be more on a grandfathered thing, like when you need to get a new cooler in or something like that, that we expected it wouldn't be a once through, but that's still something that we're exploring at this time.
Okay, is my understanding correct that those are primarily the large grocery stores that we have in our town?
There are some of them.
Okay.
Yeah, we do have buildings that use them for air conditioning as well, right?
Okay.
So it's just running the water.
Yeah, and I think the other thing just to remind people of is, even an odd watering is our regular watering now. That's not water restrictions. That is our normal way you must water in Nelson at any time. So restrictions are going from that base. So I think, we need to, again, educate our public that, that's the norm. You're not supposed to water every day as the norm. You don't need to water every day. So we need to get that message out there. And yeah, as Chris said, at this time of the year isn't the, and people aren't even, people aren't watering now. So, that heavy outdoor water use isn't happening yet. But, we get a few hot spells and it'll happen really quickly. So I think getting some education out there sooner than later that, that even though we're not in water restrictions, just a reminder of when you can water on a regular basis and get that message out there. So good preview right now.
Thank you.
Sounds like a lot of projects going on, and my head is like, but wasn't there also a liquid waste management plan? And don't we also have that parks master plan, which might not be the right word? And don't we have a whole wayfinding thing coming? And so I just wanted to, first of all, tell the lovely public how incredible of a city we are. And I was also just curious, like, do we have capacity if there is something urgent that comes up? Like how teach me, since we were losing one of our presentations tonight, teach me a little bit, like how do we manage those things?
Yeah, we, as you identified, do have a lot on our plate, and that doesn't involve, the fact that we're looking at GIS, we're having to respond to NG 911, we're doing cybersecurity training, so we're the parking changes we're making. So yeah, we have a lot on our plate. We are losing, our director of development services and have a new person coming in there, and we're hiring into that position. We've lost somebody on the climate team and hiring in new into that position. We have KLW that's, we're operating now. So, so we do have a lot on. I would say in terms of managing, some of these things have to do, and some of these things are, we just, when something else comes up, some of those things you'll hear, we've had to delay some of those things. We're not actually going to be able to complete that in the time frame we have now, and a lot of them are outside of our, lots of things are outside of our control. If we get really busy in development, some of that community planning and OCP, etc. The province, we didn't mention that one, dumped a whole bunch of housing requirements on us. We didn't expect to be as heavily involved in the housing side for our vulnerable population. So we're a dynamic and changing community. So practically, things that are more on the planning side of it, get delayed. And we have to focus on, the operational side of getting things done. The good thing is we do have very capable staff that, get things done, but yeah, I foresee some of those things that we wanted to see happen sooner than later, and we have to ask for your patience as well when other people come to the table and want us to do new things. We have very little capacity, definitely at this time, to do that, and even Chris Jury was talking about an opportunity on the conservation side. There's a grant opportunity that was sent, but we just, it has an April 30th deadline. It's a whole bunch of new work that we just don't have capacity to do that, and we really have to be focused. Is this moving, council's larger priorities forward? Everything moves. We have broad priorities, so many things move them forward, but we really need to focus on what ones actually make the largest difference, and are we still, able to deliver the services. I didn't mention we brought bylaw into City Hall here that we're, working through to figure out a whole new department. We got these new employees from KLW and new operations there, and we're bargaining, 3-4 collective agreements right now. So we have a lot on our plate. So I guess patience and just recognizing some of those things, such as a liquid waste management plan, may take longer. OCP may take longer. That's the flux in the system, is some of these planning exercises that may take longer. Or
good to
get
know.
delayed
Yeah.
altogether.
If I could add to that, I think that's one of the things, we were, CFO and I were at the chamber last week, just doing a budget presentation, and, it's really easy to kind of look at the different projects that city is doing and see them in isolation and wonder, geez, why didn't they do it this way, that way? Why didn't they do it at this time or that time? And it really is, one of the, and what I shared with them is the challenge of simply trying to staff a busy work plan. It's not as though we can be staffed to be, have that sort of peak busyness staffing year round, right? So while we could anticipate certain, obviously the projects in our work plan, we build our work plans to be 100% of our available time in the day. We don't build them to be, 70 or 80 or 90% of our day. They're 100%. So when something comes up that, maybe was planned but then changes significantly, like the civic, that takes a lot of extra time. Well, that person's work plan that was built out with 100% of items, and all of a sudden now the civic was supposed to take 20, it's now taking 50 or 60 or more, then that shift has to happen. And similarly, we've had the issues with our force main going through the lake. That was completely unplanned, obviously. And so those people have that 100% workload. Like, granted, they're in operations, but they still have projects and the time that we anticipate that they'll spend on projects. All of a sudden that gets trumped, right? So it is this idea that you're kind of always moving things around, and like Kevin said, CAO said, trying to really identify what items move council's priorities forward fast, which items we're, from a regulatory perspective obliged to do. So we're always kind of moving that chessboard around, and so it might result in some projects not happening, in the opportune timing or month or in most opportune manner possible. Right. And so that's really what we try to share, is that it's a really, really complex business. And it was nice chatting to the chamber about it, because you're chatting to a bunch of people that for the most part run businesses and get how complex it can be. And then you can actually say, now imagine running a business that has all of these different aspects to it, right? And trying to make sure that everything happens sort of reasonably as per expectations of all your residents. So I think I think it's a wonderful question, and it's nice to be able to offer some context for that stuff.
I can think of more things as you're talking.
Oh,
and
yeah.
this and this.
Yeah, and our job is to keep council informed. Here's where we are with those things. So so we try to do our best on that, but we should, Chris gives up updates when we do the financial plan updates, but and we also are hoping to have our various departments here giving updates during key times during the year, so that you're aware of where we're at with all these projects, and that doesn't include just the day-to-day of, sweeping the streets and cutting grass and all those other things that, just need to happen.
And, just because we're talking about it, and we'll be getting to the time where people will be asking questions, we're still, from a temperature perspective, not quite where we can start planting downtown and know that our flowers won't die. So I know as the weather starts to get nice, everybody's wondering when that's all going to start happening. So
Thank God you said flowers, because I was waiting, I actually thought you were gonna say, people are gonna start talking about where are we putting the snow at winter.
no.
You were listing off so many things, I thought, okay, I'm into like October now. Okay, so, city manager, do you have
One more
anything more? Oh, no, we
Sorry.
have more questions for Councillor Payne.
It's going back to sort of the Dust Bowl that Councillor Woodward mentioned, because it seemed to me this year that also less sand, gravel, whatever, got put on the streets, which is also a factor in that. Do you guys do any sort of weigh what goes out and weigh what comes back? Is that because obviously that's a factor in how dusty it's going to get, how much we put on, how much we put back. And I'm trying to think, does that tie into some of the technological advances we've made in the snow plowing with the brine and the beet juice and all that fun stuff that I love hearing about? Because I think when we bring these things forward, I think it's good to go back and revisit the success of how it worked, because it felt like me walking the streets of our town that was a successful maneuver. So I just wanted to shout out to
Yeah.
that thought
And I think
process.
those are some of the things that do fall off, is we're on to the next project and
Yeah.
going back and, certainly internally, they, I know we certainly know how much we put down because we purchase that material and we know how much of that we use. I don't think we probably measure what we take off. Some gets washed through our systems and the rest we pick up, and for us to try to quantify what that is, although I think we didn't we in budget say we, our street sweeping program, we collect so many tons of sand every year. I think or sand and gravel, I think we put that out at one time and it's substantial, but, Chris can probably share more, but I think just, Charlie been here another year and really understanding, how our hills work and how much, being really conscious of how much material we put down, because we know we have to pick it all up at the end of the season. So I think they're being much more conscious of and training the drivers on where you do need to use it and where you don't. And so I don't know if you want to add anything more on that.
Yeah, no, I other than to say, I think it's a great point. That's something that I'll follow up on and just see, how much we feel like, it's different every year or two. We don't always go through the same amount of sand. But how that brine and beet juice application did support things. I will follow up and, again, appreciate you thinking about that and considering it. And yeah, it is, like Kevin said, we have to pay to put it down. We have to pay to buy it. We have to pay to put it down. And we have to pay to clean it up. So we do definitely try to reduce that. And one has to presume, that was part of the intent, is putting it down, we'd use less sand, so then we'd have to clean up less. And yeah, just to the point of Charlie, being here another year, we're coming up, I'm about a week away from being here for a year now, if you can believe it. And thinking back to the conversations that I had with Charlie this time last year and where his thinking has evolved already, because he got, his sort of first full summer under his belt, and now how he's looking at adjusting things for this summer. It's good to see. And, it's just folks like that we really benefit from, hanging on to and letting them build up their expertise in the town and really start to leverage and, see some good gains from that. So,
Yeah, and I just think it's important. I know what you mean about going on to the next project, but just to recognize your successes, because then you communicate that out to the community. And then when the tax increase comes along, it's like, it's not because we aren't evolving, getting smarter, doing better. It's because prices are going up and this is what it's. And in the meantime, if we weren't doing all these other things, it would definitely be a different story. So thank you for all that work. Please pass it along. The other thing I just wanted to say is I did talk to BC Transit when we were at our conference this weekend, and the individual I spoke to said that Nelson's doing a great job, which I knew in my heart, but I just wanted to pass it along to everyone who was involved in that process, because it seems like from their perspective it was pretty seamless. And
All seamless here. I'm glad they're feeling as seamless. But from the operational point of view, for sure.
good.
Do you have anything more to report?
Anything else?
Do you have anything more?
I don't.
Mr. Jury?
Yeah, I mean, just talking about, things in the work plan and things that have to get shifted and delayed, and then there's some things that you can't. So that's kind of our focus now is May 15th is a hard deadline for budget, for tax rate bylaw, for financial statements. So that's all happening now, and hopefully getting near the end of it, and we'll present, I think May 7th, the auditors will come and present financial statements. We'll do our final readings of financial plan and tax rate bylaw. So we'll meet that May 15th deadline, which is great. We've got 4 other small municipalities that we help out, so same deadlines for them. So that's kind of the focus right now is on that piece.
And would you like to tell the
Yeah.
public when they can expect to get their piece of paper?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I'll talk with the staff down there about that, but we don't normally want to send them out too early because then there's more of a chance that folks are like, well, this isn't for another 2 months, so I'll just put it aside and, or it goes on the refrigerator and then a bunch of kids' art ends up piling up on top of it. So, there's kind of that 6 weeks prior is kind of a good time to send that out. So we'll be, probably sending that out kind of near the end of middle of May, end of May kind of thing. But we do have, I think it's June 13th, we have a page blocked out in the Nelson Star that we will devote to the budget and tax rates and how to pay your taxes and all that kind of informative piece. So we'll compile some information for that to be able to put that out. And of course, all the social media stuff that'll happen before that.
Perfect. Okay, and I'll ask before Councillor Payne asks, will we ever have a day when we will get this electronically?
I would love that. Yeah, that'd be great. No, I don't know if there's any municipalities that have gone full digital yet. Vancouver might have done full electronic, but I think a first step for sure is providing that as an option, kind of like what you do with, your utility invoices, hydro and that kind of thing. Or maybe that's the way to go is start with our water and wastewater first and then
Right.
kind of move to taxes. But having that as an option, for sure, I think we need to do that. When will it become the only delivery method? That's a great question. It'll definitely come. I just don't know timelines.
Hopefully not in my lifetime.
Yeah.
I'm good with my piece of paper.
Right. Yeah.
I'd like to be able to file it and look at it every year, but I mean, that's a question that we always ask, but I could see
Yeah.
water, like we've got utility now, water, sewer, and then maybe the tax bill.
And that's a perfect one too, because that one is the one where you get a lot of folks who go away in the winter, and for them, that's one that, they're conscious of, hey, it's going to be delivered to my house when I'm not here, and how do I know how much to pay? So having that be one that's electronic and they can be wherever they have to be in February and March and still get that, I think is a great option. So yeah, we'll definitely have that as the first step, is kind of working on that one.
Thank you for that. Any questions for Mr. Johnson, for Mr. Jury? Okay, then back over to Mr.
Chris, do you want to say anything about BC Transit's update on the transit exchange?
Yeah, so they're working on a few design adjustments and things like that that we're hoping we can take a look at and then have them kind of come and present that. We took some feedback that folks had given us from the public and also looked at it as well and just sort of see like what makes sense here. And we had some budget constraints as well, and just making sure we can stay within budget and what are some have-to-haves and what are some nice-to-haves, and make sure this is we can all deliver a good project here that's within budget and makes sense too. That when you're looking at it, we didn't overbuild it or put too much here that wasn't necessary. So we're kind of revisiting that and hopefully get something in the near future here that we can show everybody. Maybe have the same folks that were here last time show us an update to what that looks like.
And we're still planning then for hopefully the fall it would be completed?
Yeah, that kind of keeps getting shifted a little bit. I thought it was a very optimistic timeline initially anyway, but yeah, that gets moved a little bit more into the fall.
Okay.
But all the communication on, you know, dates and interruptions and all that will happen in a timely manner.
Any further questions for Mr. Jury? Back over to Mr. Johnson. Do you have anything further to say, or did we get most of it out with,
With the help of council, yes, I think we got most of it out. A lot of good questions. Thank you.
yeah, that was, and anything from the corporate officer? Okay. And we don't have a workshop or an educational session today, but I think that actually the Q&A here of city staff basically covered off item number 8. So council reports. Any councillors have a report? Councillor Payne?
Are we gonna talk about AKBLG?
Well, sure.
Group,
You can
or-
you can start it off, and everybody can. You're all there, so
Yep, pick a high point.
You each get one.
Okay.
One of the best.
Well, I'm gonna take the tour,
Yeah.
if that's okay. So on Friday morning, the association organized a variety of different tours for us in the area at Radiant Hot Springs. And Councillor Lockenberg and Councillor Woodward and myself all went on the Columbia Valley Local Conservation Fund tour, which I was quite interested in because we did have a presentation from Juliet Craig of our local conservation fund and what that would look like on this side of the pass in the West Kootenay. And it was, really fascinating. They took us to 3 different projects that they had funded through this, and very different, very valuable and worthwhile. And the benefit to me was that many of the funding opportunities that happened then just like many, they leveraged other activities around them that spread that conservation effort further and engaged many, many volunteers. On one particular project, they had 70 volunteers working in this particular area. And to actually be able to see what the work looked like in sort of various stages was also really informative for me. The weather was beautiful. It's a beautiful area, so I thoroughly enjoyed that part of it and was very grateful to take that opportunity. Thank you.
anything else that
I thought he said we get one.
no, you get one. But did you have anything else that you wanted to report on in particular? And then
Can I just add
Yep,
to that?
sure.
Add to that.
You add to that.
I just want to underline the leverage on the funding. They really stressed that the local conservation funding was often a necessary step to get broader funding. And I think, was it 10x or 20x? I think it was 20 even. It was dramatic
Yeah.
how much additional funding they were able to get from the initial seed investment from the local conservation fund. It was huge. The second thing that I really took away from that was that when they came back for renewal, so originally it passed very narrowly and they had a sunset on the conservation fund. When it came back for renewal, it passed unanimously. Very popular program across the region.
May I add to the same
Yeah,
thing?
sure. Keep.
Was-
Did
We
you
were all
guys?
there.
Did you all go on the same tour? Did everybody go on a different tour? Oh, okay.
What I thought was really interesting with the forest tour was how that piece was not only a recreational area but also a fire break, and the way that it was like managed, it actually increased the wildlife because it was creating corridors and opening the forest up. So it was kind of this multi-functional system was created, and then the bird sanctuary wetland area was like literally there was the sanctuary, a road, and a giant sawmill in operation. So I thought that was a really interesting combination of a very large CAN4 operation happening right next to a sort of protected wetland, and the two could coexist next door to each other, which was kind of fascinating. And then the last thing we went to, or one of the ones we went to, was a sheep wool producer. and she was making this.
Should have brought my bag of stuff.
Oh yeah, she was making this extra wool that she had. She turned into fertilizer, wool fertilizer, which is like really sought after. She said. So it was-
That keeps those new roots warm.
yeah, I guess. Anyways, it was,
Nitrogen.
yeah,
There's nitrogen in the wall.
it was a fascinating.
She showed us how they did it.
Sorry.
No. No, on that or?
Well, generally on the conference.
Okay, I had one other
So-
thing.
so I just
when
wanted to- so-
Mayor was
Yeah,
asking
and then-
if
and
there's
then-
anything
Yeah.
specific. I did actually go up to 10th Street campus of Selkirk for the Chamber's Business After Business, so that would have been a week before that, where they had the, and I should have written this down, the name of the show, the amazing technology, I'm telling you, that,
I will interject.
Okay.
It was the digital arts and digital fabrication and design show.
Thank you.
Two different programs.
Two
One's
different
in Trail,
programs.
one's at 10th Street.
but Trail brought all their stuff over, and 10th Street brought, and it was, I thought, oh, I'm gonna run in, just say hi, look around quickly. It was fascinating. So if you didn't get a chance to see that year-end show this year, make sure to go. It was really the breadth and the depth and the creativity and the ingenuity and the passion that the students just brought to their projects was exciting to see. And it's always mind-boggling to me with Selkirk College, what they bring to, what I think of as our little town. Yeah, it's world class. So I'm super glad I stayed, and I did actually end up running out of there because I went to the Capitol after that. But yeah, very worthwhile. I would highly recommend it. I know the fine woodworking show is downtown, so often makes it a little easier. But I would make the effort again next year to go all the way up to 10th Street campus, which is far from my house, but it was worth the trip. So that was it for me.
Okay, Councillor Woodward, you wanted to talk a bit more about the AKPLG, so I'll go to you next, and then we'll
Sure.
keep going around the room.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just say the one thing I learned, it was a lot of learnings, a lot of great experts, and have to actually congratulate Councillor Page, who's the president right now at AKBLG. Him and his team put together a really fine event. The one thing I came away with was a sense of commonality in issues. That basically all the towns that are there are struggling as towns through all the same similar issues: housing affordability and other, street culture, the fentanyl crisis. And, there's a lot of familiarity, and that kind of enabled us to work on these problems together. I felt like we were together. Where I remember when I first started 7 years ago, each town kind of brought their own, what they were working on, or economic development, or retaining staff, or this and that. But it really felt like there were these big issues. We're all struggling through them, but we're sort of together in them. So yeah, I kind of came away feeling supported, I guess, which was a nice feeling. And a lot of incredible ideas, super smart people everywhere trying to work on these problems. So yeah, I definitely left with a good feeling, and that we're in it together. So, thank you.
Anyone else? Comments about AKBLG or tours or just general reports that we have? Councillor Pinero and then Councillor Tate.
So I'm reporting on something that I didn't do, and I wasn't there because I was at the AKBLG instead. So there was a library board meeting, and I just feel I should pass on what happened there, allegedly. So there's a new outreach location in Slocan. They do outreach to various communities, which is great. And so that's a monthly visit from the library, and along with library items and tech demos for people. They are continuing to train their staff always. The latest things are intellectual freedom, and they've done workshops on bullying and harassment, as well as preparing for upcoming library conference. Didn't quite get the date on that, but it's upcoming soon. There's grants that they've been successful in applying for, so that is good. And then just a general conversation, I think that's been the case for the last couple library board meetings, is just the effect that the hub closure will have on the library as a space, and just discussing how to best meet the demand. The library, they're filling a role that is increasingly not being filled elsewhere, and so there's a lot of challenges there, as well as it's a challenge, but I think also, from what I understand, the people there are up for the challenge. Not that that's an ideal situation to put them in or anything, but that space does get a lot of use now that it maybe didn't before. And there's different challenges and skill sets that need to deal with that. So they're on it. Hopefully we can sort some other situation out so they don't have to be on it quite as much. But they continue with training to accomplish that, so that's good. And then just lastly, they're continuing with their attempts to connect with the RDCK around their sort of lapsed and expired agreements that they had, the areas F and H. So that's an ongoing situation, and they're trying to find some clarity on that. That agreement expired in 2022, so that's a thing that's happening. Anyway.
So it's unfortunate, Councillor Pinero, that Councillor Page isn't in the room with us, but perhaps when you get an opportunity, if you see him on the street or whatever, is just to, bend his ear so that, because there's just, the way things work at the regional district, you never know when there might be an opportunity that you can say something. And so as our representative on the regional district board, when he has opportunity while it's coffee break or over lunch or in a meeting to remind area E and F and H that they participate in some capacity, that being able to renew those things does give stability, which is what directors ask for around the table at every meeting of the regional district, is stability and constant funding. And so one should lead by example and fund those programs that are already in existence. So perhaps a few moments with Councillor Page.
Still taxing for those.
Yep, but I think their bylaws maxed out.
Yeah, I think they want, there's no indexing or anything built into the bylaw, so the money is decreasing, however you describe that.
What they do is they top that up with grants. But it's not, something you have to come every year and ask for, whereas if you can just get it in a bylaw,
Yeah.
that's the best way.
Anybody, Councillor Tate, sorry. My
I
apologies.
had a great time at AKBLG, and one of the most illuminating conversations I heard had to do with whether or not to record council meetings. And it's scary. It's scary. We are human. We stumble over words. We're able to be persuaded. We change our minds, and we're scrutinized for what we say. And so I just want to thank everyone around the table for being, I think the word is like gracious to one another, and to have hard conversations, and to have lots of 4-3 votes that are tricky to manage. So we record, and not everyone does, but I think this is an example of good recording. Can I talk about the REDIP grants, right? The Rural Economic Diversification and Infrastructure Program was announced, and that's a provincial granting program. And the City of Nelson has received $80,000 to work on a feasibility study to diversify our economy here in Nelson. And it has to do with reaching out and branching out into the film industry. And this is very exciting because one of the ideas is to better use city buildings year round. And so that might ping for some people about some of our buildings that are really only used in the winter, and how we can get better year-round usage out of those. So that's super exciting. I'm stoked about that. And then I also, when I looked at the online announcement. I noticed that Kootenay Outdoor Recreation Enterprise Society, that is a collective of a lot of small businesses in the region, received $448,000. So that's pretty cool. However, that's going to feed into the economy. It's exciting to me. So congrats to all of the grant recipients, and away we go.
Yeah, and just a reminder that our delegation this evening is Community Futures, talking about the film sector. Mm-hmm. So that'll be pretty exciting stuff. Anybody else? Okay, well, I guess I'll just wrap up with a couple of things. I think it's important that I report out the fact that I did attend the COFI meeting week before last. So that's the BC Council of Forest Industries. It's the first time I've gone to COFI, and it was a well done conference with a number of excellent keynote speakers. They definitely have the ear of the government in terms of ministries. Of course, Ministry of Forest was there, Walrus was there, Water, Lands, Resource Stewardship, whatever Walrus stands for. It's so much easier just to call them Walrus. They were there. We even had Premier Eby was a keynote speaker. I mean, he was in the room for 90 minutes. I don't remember the last time that I saw a premier in a room at, we don't get them at Health, we don't get them, it was interesting. He was there and did a Q&A for like 45 minutes. It was just impressive to see the capacity that they have to bring in leaders. And there was many good topics, and although I've got lots of them here, just a few things I want to, that I thought were very interesting. One is, lunch keynote speaker was Aaron Alexander, who's Canada's Deputy Ambassador to the United States. His presentation was excellent about trade between Canada and the United States and Canada, and he did touch briefly on softwood lumber, but he had some really unbelievable statistics about our trade and our interdependency with the United States. Something that would have been an interest to many of you in the room: wildfires, biodiversity, and natural disturbances. Building a more resilient forest sector was important. There was a lot of practitioners that were there, and Chief Forester, and forestry's role in climate resilient housing and communities. This was an excellent presentation by Don Iverson, who, if you've heard that name before, he was for many years the mayor of Edmonton. Now he's moved on to work with Cooperators Insurance, and is involved with a number of rebuild projects, and they're quite involved actually with trying to see Lytton getting rebuilt post fire. So that was very interesting. And then David Coletto from Abacus Data did a wonderful presentation on From Crisis to Consensus, how wildfires are changing the public conversation on forestry. And I think it's important that we have to consider that forestry has to be at the table if we're going to talk about wildfires and wildfire management. It can't be something that we do without that sector there. And there's many people who think forestry is a dying or sunset industry, but it's still very important. It's the second largest generator of GDP for the province of British Columbia. And as we heard from the financial conversations that we had at AKBLG, is GDP is a concern, because as the government increases its spending and its budgets, the challenge becomes, how do we meet the interest payments on all those loans? And if GDP continues to fall provincially, we won't be able to make our obligations, which then in turn affects our credit ratings, and then in turn affects a lot of things, which in the trickle-down effect of all things will land squarely on the plate of us here at City Council, with our limited ability to raise funds to meet the demands that our citizens have on being able to deliver high-quality services. So although it might sound like I went to a forestry convention, there was some really interesting speakers who talked about the economics, not just of the sector, but of the province and where we sit on a national and global scale. So I appreciate the opportunity to go there. It gave me some more insight, and I think I'm going to be able to be a better participant. As you know, I'm on the Mass Timber Advisory group here in British Columbia, which is a provincial mandated group, and I'm the UBCM representative to that board. And so I think that my preparation, being able to go and sit at that table, has been helped by attending this conference. And the other thing that I thought was really interesting, as we often talk about truth and reconciliation at this table, is that I would say that good, bad, or indifferent of what people might think about the forest industry, that in talking with the Indigenous communities that were there, this industry is leading how to do this work. Because for them, because they're on the land, and so there's been some really landmark decisions and agreements between forest companies and Indigenous groups that I think really sets the tone and sets the experience to learn from in terms of going ahead with other kinds of negotiations that have to go on in different sectors. So I found that very interesting. The Indigenous people I spoke to were very, very positive about the future of forestry in British Columbia, and looking at spreading the conversations to different tables in different areas. So I thought that was something I wasn't really expecting when I went there. So it's always good to be, find something that you didn't think was going to be there was at the table. And just in terms of your comments about AKBLG, on our very last day there was a number of interesting things, but I just wrote down, because I was a bit taken aback when a consultant suggested that one shouldn't get into the business of televising or streaming or recording. I found that very unbelievable that a consultant would say that. Meetings, as I do go down to the second to last presentation that we had on the Sunday morning from the communications guy there, who talked about the key things are accountability, transparency, immediacy, empathy, and consistency. And I think that although we might stumble, I think that we deliver that here, and we deliver it in part because of the fact that we do stream and record and minute and make ourselves accessible to the public that elected us to sit here at this table. So those are my thoughts. Anybody have any questions or concerns? Oh, Councillor Lockenberg.
Mayor, you just reminded me with the Kofi discussion that, for those of you who don't know, Professor Suzanne Simard was selected to Time's 100 most influential people
women
in the world. So Nelson's own Suzanne Simard,
Yep.
forest ecologist and sort of pioneer of an ecosystem-based approach to public policy. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, she's done great work on the mother tree, that's for sure. Anybody else? Okay, seeing nobody else, we're gonna recess now, and dinner will be coming in about 15 minutes. So if I could have a motion to recess. Thank you, Councillor Weber, seconded by Councillor Tate. All those in favor? And that carries. So thank you. Get a little bit longer break for dinner.
Thank you.
I think it will be actually still.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'd like to welcome everybody to the Tuesday, April the 23rd Committee of the Whole meeting. And I'd like to call to order. I'd like to acknowledge the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Ktunaxa, the Syilx, and the Sinixt people, and is home to the Métis and many diverse Aboriginal persons. We honor their connection to the land and rivers and respect the importance of the environment to our strength as a community. And we've been in recess, so if I could just have a motion to reconvene. Councillor Woodward, seconded by Councillor Tate. All those in favor? And that carries. Our first item up is a cultural presentation. So a poetry reading by Elizabeth Cunningham. So Elizabeth, when you can come forward, and then we'll have you do your poetry reading here because the camera will be best from up here. And I'm just going to do a little bit of background. Born and raised in Toronto.
Stand in front of the mirror. I know it seems
Oh, we
weird.
do it here? So we want to do this?
But after I do the preamble. So
You will in a sec.
yeah. So I have nice preamble. So I'd like to. Born and raised in Toronto, Elizabeth moved to Nelson with her husband, composer Doug Jameson, 10 years ago to help raise their 2 granddaughters in the Kootenays. Elizabeth's first experience in the world of poetry and publishing were with the innovative Coach House Press Toronto in the 1970s, where she designed, printed, and published several editions of her work and that of other poets. Elizabeth returned to her love of writing when she retired from 35 years of teaching and raising 3 children. She began by writing a memoir called Marty's Place, about her involvement with the emerging Canlit scene in the 70s at the Coach House Press and in the Village Bookstore, where many young and up-and-coming writers and artists gathered. Since coming to Nelson, Elizabeth has published 2 books of poetry with Ecstasis Editions Victoria, A Fragile Grace in 2018, and Watching the Light Below the Storm in 2021. Elizabeth has just completed a manuscript of poetry, Look to This Day, which describes the life and painting of iconic Canadian artist Doris McCarthy. She's now working on a collection of poems inspired by birds entitled Airborne, illustrated by award-winning naturalist and illustrator Alita Karstad. So welcome, Elizabeth. These mics will be able to catch you, so if you're just right there, you're going to be able to be on screen.
All right, so just, should I lean in this direction?
No, I think you
China?
have to lean.
you're good.
I think that you'll get picked up as long as you're,
Yeah?
because you've got 2 mics pointed at you.
Yes. All right, thank you very much for having me. These are my 2 books, A Fragile Grace, Watching the Light. And I'm going to read just a couple of poems. And they're about birds. And they've been chosen because I'm also here to present something about nominating a city bird, which is part of our bird-friendly city program that we're trying to get established here. So over the last 4 or 5 weeks, I've been presenting a nomination process to decide on a city bird. And I'm going to read poems about 2 of those birds, and one of them is the bird that has been designated, or the most number of votes that came in for that bird. So the first poem is called Osprey. And osprey, I think, to me is a symbol of Nelson. It's just a magnificent bird. So here's the poem. An osprey circled the river today in the hot white sky of the summer morning. Twice it folded its shaggy wings, dropped with the weight of fearless, certain gravity, and clutched at the depths of the relentless flowing river, at something hopeless and flickering. Whatever it was that had been there, the massive bird missed. It rose again, staggering into the air, until breathless, its stare pierced the water. Then again, like a sheer and perfect answer, it shot into the river and grabbed. What creature skirmished away? There's such silence beneath the ripples of this river. The white hawk shook off the water as it shouldered all that sky. So high it wound around again. What triggered its next release? This time I heard the whack of its wings upon the water, the snapping lock of its talons, saw the whipping struggle of the brown and gleaming fish, the glint in the yellow eye of the osprey as it flew at last over the green and sighing trees, away from the shining river, with its prey lying limp and lifeless in its clutches. Sometimes I swim alone in that water. I often wonder what it is that slithers below me, what hovers above, and what will claim at last my own frail and shimmering life.
Thank you.
And now I'm going to read you the poem of the bird that won the nomination.
Not the osprey.
You know, I don't know if you can guess what it is. You know, I leaked it. So. It's a chickadee, black-capped
Oh, wow.
chickadee. It is winter and you're gazing out the window. There are shivers of ice on bare branches. The pale sun peers with uncertainty through the stiff trees where the chickadees peek and chatter. Cheeky, they call out to you to come out into the cold. Bring your pockets full of shimmering seeds and of the grains and flowers of summer. Watch for a jaunty minute. You know what you want from each other. Lift up your palm of beaming kernels. With a perky flip of its tail, a bird will perch on your hand. Tiny claws prickling like a witty secret. Its round black head will flick the seeds in random hilarity. Then, with a pert bow, the chickadee will flit away, chuckling with glittering sustenance. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Beautiful.
Now, are there copies of your books in the library if you want to come in and read your poetry?
Yes.
And are you for sale in some of the local bookstores?
Notably,
Okay,
as I think both of them.
excellent.
Thank you for asking.
Thank you so much. Okay,
Thanks,
thank you.
Elizabeth.
Thank you. It's lovely. And I think Elizabeth was here because this is International Poetry Month. Am I making that up?
Is it?
I think I heard that at the Cultural Development Committee meeting, so.
Perhaps, perhaps.
I think that's right.
Okay.
That's correct. Yeah,
Okay.
That's Joy Barrett invited me to come because of that.
So read a poem, read a poem, say a poem.
Yep.
So item number 11 is public participation, and I know that, Elizabeth, you are wanting to participate. Is there anybody else in the room that is wanting to participate? Okay, that's great. So I'm just going to read the public participation statement. So I guess I should have out the public participation one, not the... All right, I've got a desk drawer full of these things. There we go. The City Council welcomes comments from the public on issues it is dealing with or other issues of interest to the public. Before speaking, please state your name and area of residence, city or RDCK. Comments from the public will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. This is not the forum for complaints, which are dealt with by staff through the established complaint procedure. Council will not make any decisions at this meeting about the matter you raise, but may refer the matter to staff for follow-up. Speakers must not address topics that relate to matters for which a public hearing must be held prior to council's consideration of the matters or adoption of the bylaw. Speakers shall address all comments through the mayor or presiding member, and just please avoid clapping or displaying any emotional responses, as such actions will not be permitted. Maintaining a composed demeanor ensures that all opinions can be heard in a setting that is as unbiased as possible. So, Elizabeth, I'll have you come up first, and then I think I know what your name is, and I just can't remember.
It's Greg.
Greg. Thank you, Greg. So,
So, right where I was before?
no, right, you get to be in the chair now this time.
Just got it. Talking to that.
Thank you.
And there you go. Nice. He's turned the bit on
My
for you.
name's Elizabeth Cunningham, and
A little closer. Yep. I'm looking at There you go.
there you go. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Cunningham, and I live in Nelson, and this is what I'd like to present. In May 2024, Nelson City Council approved working towards becoming a bird-friendly city certified by Nature Canada, a nationwide program that's been established to protect urban bird life. A bird-friendly city is a community where key threats to birds are effectively mitigated, nature is restored so native bird populations can thrive, residents are actively engaged in admiring and monitoring local bird populations, organizations are creating events to protect birds, progressive municipal policies are created to protect urban bird populations, and a bird team has been created to oversee and lead these initiatives. Many cities across Canada are now certified as bird-friendly, including Vancouver, Lions Head, and Saanich in BC. Nelson could be the first city in the interior to achieve this goal. To be qualified, Nelson needs to meet various criteria. These involve measures of threat reduction, habitat protection, Community outreach, which includes selecting a city bird species through a public engagement process. Throughout April, I've been gathering nominations for Nelson City Bird by submitting an article in the Nelson Star, posting a notice on the Nelson City Facebook page, talking on 4 different Kootenay co-op radio programs, being interviewed by Chris Walker on CBC Daybreak, Kelowna, and gathering nominations at the Tagum Hall Earth Day event on April 21st. I have the results to submit to Council today. Through the nomination process, 25 species were chosen by 81 Nelson participants. In third place, the northern flicker. The osprey and Steller's jay tied for second place. The black-capped chickadee was the most popular choice. I would like to propose to schedule a delegation. Oh, am I not allowed to say that? I can't
You
remember.
can say it, but there's a process. We have
I
a
understand.
process that you need to go through, and I think
Yeah,
we've
I
explained
get it.
that to
I just-
you
I wasn't sure if I
earlier
could
this
ask. That's what I'm asking.
this evening.
I would like to proceed to schedule a delegation to have council ratify the choice of the chickadee as Nelson's city bird.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you for
very
your time. And thank you for your poetry. Okay. And you were well within your time. Minute and a half. Because unfortunately, I do have to time these as,
Thank you.
I'll start the timer myself.
Oh, wow, okay. Prepared.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for this opportunity to speak to you for 3 minutes. We have met before. I'm a member of the West Kootenay Climate Hub. We had a meeting to talk about climate goals for the city. What I want to talk about today is Sioux Big Oil. So,
oh, Greg, can I have
Yes.
last name and where you live?
absolutely, get into that. Greg Amos, resident of Nelson, and I'm also the coordinator of the Sioux Big Oil West Kootenay campaign. So Sioux Big Oil is a province-wide effort to help BC municipalities launch a cost recovery class action lawsuit against the world's largest sources of climate pollution, the oil and gas industry. Multinational corporations would be the target. The campaign seeks to create the funds needed to launch the lawsuit by asking BC municipalities to contribute $1 per person until we have $500,000 committed. So far, there's 5 BC municipalities that have signed on to Sioux Big Oil. Gibson's, View Royal, Qualicum Beach, Squamish, and most recently, the village of Slocan, just to the north. So we're 10% of the way there in terms of the money we're trying to raise to get this campaign hopefully off the ground. Exactly 2 months ago, on February 23rd, I put in the delegation request for our group to appear before this committee of the whole. And that staff decision was made to deny us the opportunity to appear under the Section 4.6 of the Council Procedure Bylaw, exactly halfway through my time here, which allows for the city to refuse delegations that deal with matters that are outside the direct jurisdiction of City Council. And so myself and Andrew Gage from West Coast Environmental Law, who are a partner on the Sioux Big Oil campaign, we asked by email that this decision be reconsidered, and again, we were turned down. So I'm here today to ask, and I know the question can't be answered today, but I'm here to ask if council could consider a motion to allow our group to appear as a delegation. And the delegation would be myself and a small group of volunteers who've been working hard to show that Nelson residents want council to support this. Elizabeth is one of them. And our declaration of support shows that, as verified by postal code, we have 153 Nelson residents who want to see this come before council, and a total of 317 West Kootenay residents. And so that's the ask I have today, and I'm just going to end with a small addition to the big picture. The climate crisis is going to make everything worse. We can't control the past or take back our historic carbon emissions. But we can control the future, starting with taking effective climate action at local and regional levels, and I think it's a moral obligation to do so. So, thanks
Yep.
for
Thanks, Greg.
hearing me.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing
Do you have
that
something to
in.
hand out there?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Not a question.
Councillor Lockenberg.
Thank you, Mayor. Under our procedure bylaw, and just for clarity's sake, I'd like to refer this to staff for future reconsideration, even if it's just a delegation, because it sounds like there was some attempt to get on the delegation, and I understand why, but I'd personally love to see a delegation. So if I can refer that to staff.
So,
Can I just speak
Yeah.
to that? So you probably heard from me,
And I did send you the administrative fairness policy and our steps that you need to go through for us to address your request. That's all I'm going to say. So,
Right. My understanding is there's two routes we can take, either a notice of motion from a council member or a direct appeal to city staff.
the notice of motion is not included in the council's procedure bylaw.
Okay, well, I'll do whatever it takes to get this delegation underway because, as mentioned, we have a lot of local support.
So I think you've had some communication with staff, and perhaps if you're not clear on next steps, is that you could reach out to the corporate officer again in regards to that?
Yeah, I'm sure I could. I'd like to do this whatever way is most effective.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Nobody else from the public?
Oh, yeah, sure.
And
Sure, thanks.
yeah. What are you handing out?
Did you want one?
Counselor,
bookmark.
yeah, I would like to have whatever the
Anybody else
information is. Well, I mean, he's given out information I need to, thank you. Yeah, and one for the agenda, yeah, I mean,
I didn't know.
no, I mean, when stuff goes for circulation, we circulate it so that it becomes part of the record. Counselor Payne?
I'm just curious, and I can probably find this out, but if this is passed at other municipalities, I'm assuming that they did have a delegation that presented, so I'm wondering why their procedural bylaws would have permitted that and ours do not.
It's because every council has they're not standardized procedural bylaws throughout the province, and there could be other ways that it came to the table, because my guess would be, does every council have to have a procedural bylaw in some form? Yeah, but each one is different.
That's what I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I'm interested in.
And so this is the procedural bylaw that, just to remind you, this is procedural bylaw that we looked at the beginning of our term and agreed to, and we can bring back the procedural bylaw at any time if we feel that there's need for revision of the procedural bylaw.
Perfect.
So it's the one that we use currently.
Sure.
Yeah, I get that.
Mayor, if I may point of clarification. So just to be clear, it sounds like there's more going on than is apparent right now, but our procedure bylaw doesn't prohibit this delegation. It's just the process in which this
Yes, we're talking about the
proponent
process,
came
yes.
through.
Yeah.
Didn't follow the procedure bylaw. Not the content of what they're bringing, but just the steps they took. They didn't follow the right steps.
They do.
Just
I think they followed the right steps. It's the fact that
Denied.
under 4.6, it doesn't, that part of the procedural bylaw would potentially exclude them from coming to present. But they've been given the information that there is procedural fairness that they can apply for. So they can apply, if you read your policy,
Yeah.
they can apply to the city manager, and the city manager can, at his discretion, make a ruling.
right. Or alternatively, any council member could put forward a request. We could vote on it to refer it to an upcoming meeting. We could do that as well.
But that's not part of the procedural bylaw. I mean, I could be wrong, but I'm just,
Take this offline. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
make
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
we're trying to follow a procedure, and what happens when we step away from procedure, the water gets very muddy. So there is a procedure, it's been laid out, and I think we just have to let the procedure play out going forward. Doesn't mean that they don't end up coming as a delegation at some point. And now we're at delegations. There you go. We have Community Futures is here, and I'd like to call forward Andrea and the group that is with her, and why don't I have a little preamble? I must have a preamble here somewhere. Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out where are my notes. Oh, there we go. So, Ron LeBlanc of Community Futures will be providing a presentation on the Kootenay regional film sector. There is a bit of background there. The Kootenay Regional Film Commission is at the forefront of transforming the Kootenay region into a vibrant film production hub within British Columbia, a province renowned for being one of North America's largest film production centers. As a key player under the large umbrella of Kootenay Film, alongside initiatives like the Kootenay Screen-Based Initiative, KRFC works diligently to promote and utilize the unique and varied landscape of the Kootenays, from rustic cabins and heritage towns to majestic natural scenery. So welcome to the three of you, and I'll let you all introduce yourselves, please.
So I'll kick us off. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us. I'm Andrea Wilkie, the Executive Director with Community Future Central Kootenay. Happy to be here with two great colleagues. And so with me is Ron LeBlanc, as mentioned, who Community Futures has contracted to do economic development coordination for the Slocan Valley for several years. And more recently, Ron has picked up the film sector development file. And then with him is John Whitmire, who is the Kootenay Regional Film Commissioner. And the two of them have been working hard to help our region bring some of the film industry here, and also to leverage the skill set of the individuals we have in our region that are working in the sector. So with that, I'll pass it to Ron and John.
Thanks, Andrea. How's that? Fine? I think I'd rather Andrea just do the whole presentation herself. Her voice is so beautiful. So here we go. Developing the Kootenay regional film sector. I press the arrow and let me just see.
Is it just the?
There we go.
Oh,
I'm just going to
gotcha.
hit it really hard. Yeah, thanks for the introduction. Just as a bit of background-wise, a guy from Slocan Valley here presenting to Nelson Council. John is the Kootenay Regional Film Commissioner and takes the regional part very seriously. And he lives in the Slocan Valley. He approached me as an old colleague and said, hey, I need some support in developing this sector. And part of my mandate as an economic developer is to try to promote economic development, but also diversification. So I want to just, you can't really, do you have a screen?
Yeah, we have.
We have them all.
Okay.
Yep, these.
So when we talk about who is in the field of film in British Columbia, I'm going to start at the bottom. First of all, we have the regional industry and crew. So there's a lot of people here in the Nelson area and the Kootenays who work in film and often have to travel to one of the major centers to find work. There's regional stakeholders such as Community Futures and other, the NAEDP and the Slocan Valley equivalent, etc., that are involved because we have common goals. There's the Kootenay Regional Film Commission and the Film Commissioner. So the commission, there's an MOU in place there, so there's some folks there that have hired John to be the film commissioner. And the film commission, basically, the umbrella for all of the film commissions in British Columbia is Creative BC, is a government arm of the government. And so that's what they do. Our purpose collectively is economic development, diversification, and especially creative sector support. So Nelson being an arts and culture kind of town, we take that very seriously. Specifically, what we're trying to do is attract and develop more film production work here in the Kootenays.
And while Ron's switching slides, I'll just mention, so where this fits with the Nelson and Area Economic Development Partnership strategic goals is one of the sectors we identified we want to support is the arts and culture sector. And so we saw synergies there in terms of there's lots of overlap between people working in arts and culture and people working in film.
Thanks. So just a little bit of a background. About a year ago, collectively, we applied for a grant through ETSI-BC, Economic Trust of Southern Interior, and Columbia Basin Trust. We got some funding to do some research on the Kootenay regional film sector. So that's been distributed to council. I don't know how many of you read the 60 pages, but we did. It's a robust report. And we surveyed a lot of the decision makers on who decides to bring, film to a certain location. So we asked them, hey, what are the barriers? What are you looking for? So we built a case around that. One of the appendixes to that report is a feasibility study on developing film studio and production offices here in Nelson. So it's a side
thing and kind of dove into it there. So please feel free to refer to that report, and if you don't have it, I can send it again. But pulling a few things out of that report specifically, because we're presenting to council, some recommendations for local government is some things that you can do to help the sector thrive is adopt community film-friendly policies and measures, pursue investment in regional film industry assets, and that's kind of what we're working towards here. Streamline municipal film location permitting processes. That would make John's life a lot easier when a film production wants to come and film here. To have that really thought through in advance would be awesome. And inventory community assets and identify suitability for film production use. And that, again, that's part of the backstory to what brings us here today too. So pulling out from that report too in the feasibility study, and just to be transparent, John and I wrote that report, and here we are quoting ourselves. So I don't know how that works for you guys, but anyways, we found that it's recommended that the Nelson Civic Arena be developed for multiple use, but also seasonal. We want to make sure that word's in there. Incorporating a film soundstage, lighting grid, production offices, and secure storage. And there's more information in that appendix of that report. So to look at some preliminary drawings. Now, this was just to illustrate what could be done there in the Civic Arena. And really, first and foremost, like, we understand it's a hockey arena, and the priority for council is for this space to be a recreational space. We're not looking in any way to displace hockey players or figure skaters or whoever uses that space currently. So we're trying to work around this space physically, and we're trying to work around the space in terms of scheduling. So we see an opportunity here where there's some downtime when the assets aren't being used, and maybe there's a potential to have some economic development work there through a film studio, film offices. So this is an illustration of how we could fit in some production offices, which are super valuable. They're just cubicles, but everybody needs a space to work from. And they would be set off to one side. Now, we just did a tour with some councillors and Kevin Cormack and MLA Brittany Anderson. And we did a tour of the hockey arena and the curling rink to look at spaces that could be a potential fit. And so these drawings do not accurately reflect what's available there. It would be on the other side of that hockey rink, as I understand it from Sam Ellison, because there are stands where those ones are now. So not to pay too much attention to those drawings. We just want to show the support. So there's stakeholders, but then there's also people that want to put some skin in the game. They see the value in the work that we're trying to do to develop the film sector in the Kootenays. So there's been grants from Economic Trust, from ETSI-BC, from Columbia Basin Trust, just recently from the province of BC through the REDUP program. NAEDP has chipped in, Slocan Valley Economic Development Partnership have chipped in, and the Kootenay Regional Film Commission. So there's kind of stacks of support. Now, we just, I'm going to assume that council is aware that there was a provincial application done for a grant under the REDUP program under the city of Nelson, and was successful. We were one of 10 in the Kootenays that were successful in getting a grant. And so there's $80,000 that the province is contributed to take this feasibility plan and do some more planning with it. Specifically some architectural work, some engineer work, et cetera, and some plannings. NAEDP have committed to $10,000 to the planning project as well. And yeah, so I'm just going to repeat myself. It just moves the project from planning to shovel ready is the idea. And part of this process is to talk about governance. Who would own, well, we know who would own the asset, but who would manage the asset? And so planning, project management, all that sort of thing will be a nice little package. And recent developments. So just to say this is not pie in the sky, there's actually a lot of excitement around the Kootenays right now in terms of filming potential. John has been taking a lot of phone calls from producers that are interested in scouting the area. There is a major TV series coming to Castlegar in May. We're not allowed to say what the show is, but there's a picture of some zombies there, if you can put it all together.
I wonder what that show
is. Yes, so everybody's excited about that because it's a great, it's a great way to kick off the work and shine a light on the work we're trying to do. Also, locally, Amy Bohegan, her series Southern Interior, I don't know if that's plural, has been greenlit, so I think council is aware of that, so that's very exciting. And John and team are currently scouting multiple projects, so there's a lot of things that are in the works. Yeah. And so one of my notes there is that, yeah, there's some productions that have said, hey, we'll take what you've got as is. So I just want to put that out there right now. Timeline, basically right now we're working at implementing the grant, basically, the project for planning. And we're going to take through the summer until September to do that. And then September, October, we're hoping to leverage that information and apply for another REDUP grant, and that would be for capital costs, and that would be a much higher number. And then we won't know until about a year from now if we were successful with the capital grant. If we are, then we can build and renovate next summer, and then we should be done by fall. It's not a big job. Some of the things that we are looking at is, if council agrees and there is a request in front of council, I think we're not supposed to ask here. So, but if that proceeds, one of the things we're talking about is maybe we could pave the hockey rink for multiple use. Can I say that, Kevin? I don't know. Concrete floor. Concrete.
Yeah, we're not paving we're not paving the rink.
That was my language. I got to work on it. Paving. But there's an example. So, yeah, concrete floor. So I think that's it for time. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Can I just add a couple things on
Thanks.
context around?
But you did a good job.
Oh, thanks. I'm sweating.
Yeah.
I hate that.
You're working on Andrea's voice. So just in terms of context, how the city got involved, I think John was scouting out where are some facilities, existing facilities in our communities that are underutilized, and could there be a fit? So that was the original approach, to say, oh, city, you seem to have some assets that aren't used year-round. Could there be a fit there? So certainly one of our goals is obviously to get better use of our facilities, make better use of them. And as Ron pointed out, we also looked at, could there be some improvements that would benefit other activities in our community if we could partner with that. So that was kind of the genesis of it. And I think the other key piece of that is, from the film side is, I was able to go tour some studio space in Langley when I was down at a conference there, and they're purposely built facilities that sit around waiting for some activity to come happen in them. So obviously expensive, they sit around, you make a big investment, and that's just not probably in the cards and in any of our communities here in the Kootenay. So it was really from the film thing, our facility sitting there empty anyway. So if it didn't have a film, it's not like losing money sitting there or anything like that. So that was the kind of some of the synergies. We had a building that was vacant. They were looking at buildings that weren't incurring a bunch of costs that they would have to pay for to sit there until something happened. So those were a couple synergies, and like I said, the third one was really, could there be some capital improvements that we could get funding from other bodies that would improve those facilities for multiple use beyond film or the current recreation activities. So that was the sort of the genesis from, from our side to say, okay, well, let's look at this and do some more work and bring it to council to see, if that makes sense to everyone.
Councillor Lockenberg.
Ron, thank you for that presentation. Could you explain to me what you're specifically looking for in a studio? So I just understand the difference between the Civic Arena and the curling rink. For example, is the curling rink high enough? Do you have certain height things that you're looking for? Like, what about the infrastructure? Like, what would make you decide one versus the other?
I think John would be a great person to. I have an answer, but I think he has an answer too.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Well, height is really important, and size, floor area, and no pillars or obstacles in the middle of the room. So having like a free span, which both the curling rink and the arena ice hockey rink have, is ideal. The ice hockey rink is really ideal because it's got 45 feet plus ceiling height. And then they can have a lighting grid in there, they can have the space that they require. If they were to build a 2-story set, and sometimes they do, I mean, you're gonna need that kind of height. So it's ideal to have that sort of ceiling height. And in the curling rink, I'm thinking it's about 20 feet high. Sorry, I'm not doing metric. And that's more than adequate for the needs of a film company. So both those rinks are ideal in terms of the kind of amenities and the kind of things that a film production company would be looking for.
And maybe just add, John, maybe talk about, because I think the same thing, they're going to film the studio there, but you should see what else goes with a film production. Maybe talk about all those other pieces like wardrobe and building sets, and there's a whole bunch of other things that go on.
Thank you. The facility itself is key, of course, but what goes into it and how it can be enhanced, especially in a city like Nelson, which is considered an arts community, is you have so many potential job overlays. For example, carpentry would then become scenic carpentry, and painters would become scenic painters. And then you have props people who are the makers and the people that we so love here in the arts community, as well as set decorators. There's a lot of transferable skill sets from the community now to the film industry in general. And I think all of us probably have friends or are themselves artists, and they know how difficult it is to market the things that they do. So this would take those skill sets and they would focus it on a industry that has the economic ability to hire people in large groups to make the facility become more than just a big empty space. It would have carpentry shops, potentially paint shops. It could have anchor tenants. It could be people involved in post-production. It could have equipment rental. It could have a number of things that are film-related vendors that need a facility like that in order to operate.
Follow up with Councillor Lockenberg.
Yeah, so then it seems to me that not only do you have the Civic Theater and the curling rink, but then there's also the indoor soccer facility, and NDCC Arena itself, in case that largely is empty during the summertime. So you've actually got 4 potential spaces that you could expand into. All of them seem like that seasonal thing is pretty key there, because they're available mostly in the summertime. Is that, I don't know this industry at all, like is it a summer industry for Latitude like we're in here? Like, in other words, is that, I would hate to see, for example, potentially hate to see a lot of pressure if we see like, okay, we landed a few projects here, now more are interested, and it really starts to put pressure onto the shoulder season and into those other seasons. Is this generally a seasonal thing, and is that viable?
Understood, and in fact, there's so much cinematic potential here in the Kootenays, but as you're probably aware of, you have your snow, and you have all of those sports and elements that would be focused on that kind of cinema. But in the West Coast, it's 365 days a year. There's filming going on all the time. The Kootenay region would be seasonal for a number of reasons. Number one is you can't fly into the Castlegar Airport half the time.
Yeah.
And I'm joking, but not. And then the other thing is that the winter, of course, will have other end users such as hockey and other people who are using at the curling rink. We're really looking at perhaps having the availability of those facilities after the ice is out in both of those arenas. And it should not have an impact on the end users as they are now. And that actually fits the seasonal element because a lot of the production will not be coming in the winter anyway. They will be coming in late spring and throughout the summer and into the fall. So it would be sandwiched in between the seasons that are probably the most conducive to other end users. I don't see a problem with that. And that is specific to the Kootenays. As I mentioned, on the coast, a studio would be operating all the time.
Right.
When available.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Woodward.
Thank you, Mayor. So one of the things that would concern me is our geographic isolation and, equipment that would be needed and staff crewing a big movie. They do it in Vancouver because everything's there. But there are, obviously many small productions have happened here, and some larger ones. But what can you say about, the scale of what could happen here in terms of equipment, travel, and crew?
Well, if you want to look at Castlegar as an example, the TV series that's going in there will likely have 200 to 300 people. And there are some accommodation pressure. Nelson is likely to get a lot of overflow just for that reason. But we also have some other plans to interact with Selkirk College that has a new campus, dormitories going into Castlegar as well as here. And the rates that they're asking for something like a film production to pay is extremely reasonable and will be very attractive to a producer. And it'll help offset the cost of them coming out from the coast if that's where they originate, because accommodation is expensive. In the past, I've worked on about 4 movies here in Nelson, or in the West Coast, West Kootenays. And we were able to manage accommodating crew, typically 80 to 100 people on average, plus cast. And a lot of the cast were put up in people's homes. They were billeted, as were some of the department heads. And we were able to get everybody housed on a movie called The Tall Man back in 2010 or 11 without any problem at all. So we were able to host a production reasonably large, not the one coming to Castlegar, I can guarantee you, but we have the ability to do that. Most of the shows that are going to come here will be the Lifetime movies, the Hallmark movies. They're hugely popular. They typically, with prep and shooting time and wrap, are about 5 weeks in duration. So whatever pressure there may be on accommodation can be amortized over a fairly short period of time.
And the equipment?
The equipment is typically rented from production hubs like Vancouver and Calgary. And so we're closer to Calgary. I expect that we'll get some business from Calgary coming in. A lot of the equipment, not to get too technical, but the grip equipment and lighting equipment and camera, they're put on 5-ton trucks and 10-ton trucks, and they're driven from these production hubs to come in temporarily, offload the equipment, and then after the shoot, they go back.
Okay, thank you.
Questions?
Can I add to the answer, or do I?
No, sure, you can add to the answer. You're there as a...
Just checking on the process there.
Yeah.
And Jesse, if we have enough production that's happening here, we've been in talks with one of these equipment rental places that would be interested in housing some equipment here in the Kootenays, on their dime, basically. So, yeah, there's been.
Which is what I alluded to earlier, is that what happens when a production comes is you have a lot of film-related vendors. So there's another potential job that could be available locally for people who want a small business, who would be hiring locally. And then a lot of the equipment would be available, and that would save a lot of time for productions and costs to come out from these other production hubs. But that is further down the road.
Yep.
But it has happened, and it's a potential revenue stream to bring in for the city, because if you had an anchor tenant like that, they're going to want to pay rent. You are going to want to pay rent, them to pay rent.
And to pay rent.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I ask a question?
You sure can ask a question.
Hi. Thanks, John. I was curious, you've mentioned a couple times about lighting racks. Can you explain a little bit more how those work? And the lighting rack, like imagine in the civic arena, is that something, is that freestanding? Is it set up? I'm just trying to understand it.
Sure, thank you. Ideally, a film, not even a purpose-built film arena, but something like the Civics Center would have a lighting grid, and the grid would hang from the ceiling or the trusses, but not always. Not all film use that kind of extensive lighting. And the other thing is there are some weight restrictions with the ice hockey arenas. So if a company actually wanted to set up a lighting grid, there are for rent these structures that are temporary structures that are spread across the width and the length of the space where the studio would potentially be. And then the lights hang from there, but when the production is gone, they also take that lighting grid away. I think that might be the answer, because my understanding is there are some engineering issues with the ceiling, and we wouldn't want to put that under any more stress than necessary.
And if I may, part of our project, part of the funding that we just received was to hire an engineer to look at the trusses in the Civic Arena, specifically around a lighting grid, to see if it could withstand that kind of weight, and if not, we have to look at workarounds. But that's something we would flesh out in the coming months.
Thanks.
Councillor Tate.
It just gets me pinging to our previous conversations. But I also recall that there's a lot of, maybe we might describe them as leasehold improvements that would need to be in place, like HVAC, right? So if you have little mini offices in there, there's going to need to be some heating and airflow. And now that you're talking about lighting, I'm thinking, oh gosh, that sounds like electrical. Like there's lots of pieces that would need to be fleshed out. After I read this, I was like, there's so much more to learn. Yeah.
May I just add one thing?
Yeah, sure.
Is I started out in the film business in 1985, so I literally grew up with it. And before there were all these big studios and purpose-built studios, we were shooting in barns and warehouses and under all kinds of conditions with no HVAC, I can tell you. And it was fine. It's how we built the industry. So people really are flexible when it comes to coming into these facilities. They don't expect it to be perfect. And I did scout the series called Mighty Ducks. You guys may have recalled that franchise. They wanted a retro style civic or arena, and so I immediately thought of this. They didn't decide to come here, but there's a possibility of utilizing what we have as an asset into what production is requesting. And it doesn't have to be a purpose-built studio, which is going to cost a fortune. I think at this, where we're at right now, we could use with what we have. The subject has come up about a concrete floor. That would be great if we could. One reason for that is, yes, we could try to put plywood down on the existing sand floor, but there would be a lot of deflection with the plywood. That in turn would cause vibration of the cameras, blah, blah, blah. You can see where this is going. So concrete is ideal, plus it opens up to other potential end users.
Can I
add a final point?
I had a question, just sort of in general terms. I'm kind of trying to look at this too in terms of maybe Nelson being a touch point, and I'm just sort of thinking in terms of what is the regional economic impact for this? I mean, I sit on the, what is it that I sit on? I'm looking at you, is it like, it's the advisory, I'm not on the one that meets every month, I'm on the advisory.
Advisory committee.
Thank you, because I always get them mixed up. I'm on the advisory NADPE meet group, which meets quarterly, so I was aware of the applications to ITCBC and some of the other funders, and trying to take a more regional look, because of course, we fund economic development with our regional partners, because we think here in Nelson, that's very important. That's why we don't have an economic development office that's plunked here right in the city, because we realize that we're small and we can't do this without our friends. Comment about other local sites. I guess it's just the beauty of the local area. There aren't any large buildings close at hand, unless you were going to be in Pacific Insight, which got sold. But could you comment a little bit on the regional aspects of this in terms of benefit for the region, and how far you might, venture out from Nelson for shooting? Like, is Creston on the list? I think of their lovely grain silos that they've managed to be able to save. And when I look at all of the aspects of and just having come from Radium Hot Springs in the East Kootenay and traveled through the grasslands there, a little comment on that for me, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, shall I go? Okay.
Yeah, I think, because it's your job.
Yeah, you're the guy. Yeah, I think it's you, because I think you're the guy. You're the regional film commissioner.
Well, let's stick for the time being with West Kootenays. When I have worked on movies here, there was it wasn't purely Nelson-based or Nelson-centric, because these little communities like Salmo and New Denver and Silverton and Caslow has been a popular film destination. Queens Bay, I worked on a Hallmark movie there. We used a little church, beautiful little church. They do go far afield, and so West Kootenays would probably be in an ideal situation as it relates to having a studio facility and production offices here. If they have to go too far, then they come into their actual, what we call camera day. How many hours can you get out of a camera day, which is typically 12. So in other words, if they have to drive 2 hours to get somewhere and 2 hours back, it's probably not too feasible. But the nice thing about our area is that we can get between the cusp and Caslow down to Salmo and Roslyn. These would be an ideal way to reach out to some of those communities and to be inclusive with them. As far as the East Kootenays go, is I have been working there with Darren Brewer and some other people in the economic development office, and Darren is a force of nature. He has somebody who actually owns an old Canadian tire store, which is about 30,000 square feet, and he was trying to propose that would be turned into a studio. So they have their own thing going, and they also have an airport which doesn't have the same restrictions as our airport does in the winter, and so they have a longer season that will be available to film production. And the same thing would be true. Then Cranbrook becomes a production hub, and then Invermere is reachable. All of the other places in between, Fernie, we've shot a number of different movies there. So it is, of course, too far to go from Nelson all the way to Cranbrook. So they would have to be kind of dealing in a regional sense with what their assets are and how they could be applied to the film industry. And that's one of the things I do. However, we're in an interesting place here because, we can go to places like Roslyn and New Denver, and in a lot of my scouting, I'm being asked for this beautiful heritage small town look, which is really, really appealing to producers. And why we have not been discovered until recently is anyone's guess. And my guess is that it's transportation and it's the economic issues that producers might face to have to bring crew all the way out here to Vancouver. I'm happy to say we have about 140 vetted film crew, some of whom are union people. IATSE is the technical union, DGC is the production union. We are slowly ramping up to a place where we can begin to host these shows. And yes, all the other, I forgot Trail. Trail is awesome in terms of period piece. You want something out of the 60s? Go to Trail. But we're really lucky because there's such a variety of different production value right at our fingertips, and Nelson could be the epicenter of what's available here to service those areas.
Thank you.
That's one more question.
Yes, you sure can.
Thank you, Mayor. The change from traditional film to digital. I remember that. I was part of that change. I went to Emily Carr, studied film and video. I was 1997. I graduated from the car. I was making my film on flat decks. When I got out, I couldn't get a job because it turned digital. But I'm wondering, you know, with that equipment change, and it's much smaller equipment, everything's more compact. And then, of course, lots of like sports films are done here with all digital equipment, super high quality. So I guess that probably changes the metrics, I guess, because the equipment is much more compact. You can move it around more. You need less people. So I guess that maybe in some ways, like, that would benefit our area because you wouldn't need as much crew and you wouldn't need such large amounts of equipment. Is that a true statement?
Somewhat, yes. I mean, I grew up in that era too, 35 millimeter. You know, cameras are really big and expensive and heavy. It is amazing how the digital film world has just completely taken over from that old school. Now the new thing is AI. How will AI affect the technology? And what is the next step in digital photography? There's a whole lot of things coming, but we could adapt, for example, if we're allowed to be in a facility like the arena, is we could put in time, and given enough money, something called a video wall, which is all a digital technology. This is a large wall, like what would have been called a green screen, is now an array, a series of digital screens that have the background, or what we call plate shot, and then in the foreground, all the actor action. You could be on a mountaintop. You'd never know that you're not on a mountaintop. You're in a campground, or rather a tent on a ledge somewhere. It's phenomenal. So we can adapt to that. But either way, you require a facility in order to have that kind of technology. But you're absolutely right. It's changed, and it's changed rapidly, and it's still changing every day. There's some new advances in post-production and that kind of technology.
Okay.
Which is, by the way, creates jobs.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
Selkirk College is a perfect example. They have a digital film area there that they use. Amy Bohegan as part of that. And my hope would be that in time, graduates would come out of their College of the Rockies. They would then have opportunities for jobs and job training and job placement.
Okay, if there's no further questions, I'm going to leave the last word to Andrea with the nice voice.
Thank you.
So make sure you just turn that mic a little bit so that we can all hear you.
I was just going to say, John's phone is ringing with people inquiring about coming to our region, and we will be following up this presentation with an ask. And so I guess to say, if the city's able to make space available as is, that John could then, offer out to people looking to come here, that would really help get the ball rolling. And then, of course, the other piece is figuring out, can this project have access to existing city assets? So that'll be the follow-up. But yeah, just to say the phone is ringing, and it would be great if we could set John up so he could say yes to some of those inquiries that he's receiving.
Yeah, so I'll just ask you, Andrea, to make sure that you continue to work with city staff so that an appropriate ask can come back through the procedural requirements to come to council, because of course here at Delegations we don't contemplate any asks, so that has to come back to us through the appropriate form. But I'd imagine that we will be hearing from you in short order, by the sounds of things. Councillor Tate.
Can I just clarify? But completing the feasibility study and doing the community outreach and all those pieces, that's not an ask, because that's already a grant in place. Do I understand that correctly? So that work is ongoing.
Right.
Okay.
I would think I would think if I'm listening correctly, the ask is about being able to get access to the building, sort of perhaps sooner than later. But
Gotcha.
I don't know, and I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth.
Gotcha.
And it has to come back to us through the right thing, because that would then be potentially looking to formulate a lease on our assets. So it does have to come back to us at a business meeting.
Because, I mean, lots of modern film now are this combination of done digitally and then maybe a bit of shot outside and then digital. So, I mean, very large, as John was saying, very large green room that could be constructed in a space. And then you have a shot at Lakeside Park and then in the green room. Like most of the movies, I think, are probably shot pretty much digitally now in a green
You're
room.
ruining, you just, I don't know, like, I'm sort of old school, remember, I'm still the
want
person that
actual-
I'm still the person that watches cable television, so I don't wanna think that every time I've watched somebody climb El Capitan, that it was actually a backdrop and they were actually standing on a platform, so.
Okay, sorry to burst your bubble.
Sorry.
If I may add, we know that the curling arena and we know that the ice hockey arena have some issues, engineering, some other things that we need to address. However, the curling rink offices, space, is ideal for production offices, and it doesn't need any leasehold improvements at this point in time. It's ready to go. It is the perfect type of facility for a turnkey style of operation. Should we get a green light and the film requires to come here, they need a place to land. And so if the curling club offices, the mezzanine in that area, were made available, it would help to be able to market that part of the facility quicker. The other areas, in terms of addressing floor issues, I mean, it's going to be what it's going to be.
Yeah.
But the curling club offices are quite ideal.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
That's great.
Any further questions, councillors? Okay, seeing none, then I'd like to thank you for coming in and updating us on all of the exciting news about the potential for film in the Kootenay area, and congratulations on getting all those grants that you were successful with, and we look forward to also hearing updates. Don't stay away as you have further updates on how all of your next steps go. Like, we would like to have you come back in and keep us well informed. And Andrea, of course, is very good with that, so we know where she hangs her hat.
Thank you very much.
Anyways, thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity and the support.
Okay, there was no late items to our committee of the whole, so item number 14, a resolution to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Tate, seconded by Councillor Pinero. All those in favor of adjournment? 1, 2. Boy, I tell you, it's always hard to get the adjournment. Okay, thank you. Thank you. And so, all in favor, and we're adjourned.
I'll win.